Okay, so we're recording now, and today we have Dylan Wages here with Hotfire Creative. He's going to talk to us about ADA compliance or website accessibility, and we'll just hand it off to him. So he has most of the hour to tell us what it is and show us how we can update our Divi sites with some quick fixes so that we're a little more compliant. So
Yeah,
Dylan, take it away.
yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Dustin, for lining this up. And I'm glad everybody's interested in accessibility or ADA compliance. We'll kind of go over those terms for the presentation, but I'm going to go through a presentation, and then towards the end of the presentation, I'll open a live Divi site, and we'll kind of just troubleshoot a little bit. We will not have time to, make everything accessible because it does take time and it does take patience. So, but I can show you some quick tips. Let me get into the presentation here. Let me open this up for you guys. Introduction. Okay, let's see here. Going to, all right. Can everybody see the first slide? Right, good.
Yep, I can see it.
Is that showing up? Okay, cool. All right, this is Introduction to Web Design, Website Accessibility. Let's see here. Today's goals: gain a clear understanding what website accessibility means, learn about the different levels of accessibility, how and when to plan your website accessibility, and go over web accessibility design principles and how to apply them. So, and then we'll also perform, like I said earlier, perform some live examples on a Divi site. And also learn some tools, some like quick tools to kind of help you diagnose your site, where it's at, where some problems are, things you can't see, things you wouldn't notice. So I'll go over some of those tools, and let's see, let's get into it. Let's see, web accessibility. Is an accessible website is one that you can use by anyone, people of all abilities and disabilities. It's kind of a general kind of just statement what web accessibility is. When thinking of disabilities, we usually think about, blind or someone who's blind, individuals in like wheelchairs or hearing impaired. Those are kind of like the general ones. But when we also got to think about it in forms like color blindness, muscle dystrophy, or even sometimes like a temporary disability, like someone who broke their arm, for example. They may not be able to use a mouse. They might have to use a keyboard to navigate a website. So even those are kind of grouped into this group as well. There's a wide range of individuals who need access to services on the web, and we need to remove as many barriers as possible for them, so they have access to the same information that a fully able person is. Let's see, why accessibility matters. It's socially responsible. I mean, it's just kind of the right thing to do. It's great for SEO. That's a big one for clients. And I'm talking to people, if you do the things right, it's great for SEO, and it will continue to get better for SEO in the future. From what I understand, Google might even start leaning towards, this is not fact yet, but I have a feeling they're going to start leaning towards people who have accessible websites. And they can tell that by the way they crawl sites. So we can get into some of those things as well. It allows your organization to reach more people and increases revenue opportunities. So, what that means is for like an e-commerce website, if someone who has a disability can't navigate and buy products, they won't be able to purchase from you. In some cases, it might be legally required to have a web accessible website. I go over these laws, and I want to preface it, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to go over these accessible laws, and it's more for the terminology, because you've already probably heard in this presentation, ADA, accessibility, then you'll hear 508. So I just kind of use this section to kind of just touch those briefly, so you kind of know what they mean or where they come from. What is ADA compliance? ADA compliance stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act. So ADA, that's what that's abbreviated to. And it was it's a comprehensive federal civil rights law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disability. Title II applies to state and local governments, while Title III applies to all places of public accommodation. However, both scenarios require organizations to remove any barriers to disabled persons' ability to access goods or services. So that's kind of the general sense. When you saw wheelchair ramps and you see Braille on elevators, that's kind of more wrapped up in that act. And then the next stage of that for digital footprint for the government was a 508. So what Section 508 is, basically is just kind of applying to digital goods. 508 bars the federal government from procuring electronic information technology goods and services, including website design, that are not fully accessible to those with disabilities. So that's kind of like the government's answer, and that's more applied to their own websites and government access or government funded websites. So that's what the Section 508 is about. A little more on the history. In 2010, the U.S. Department of Justice issued an advance notice to propose rulemaking to intend to amend a section Title III of the ADA to ensure it would apply to all website accessibility. The Department of Justice was planning on moving toward incorporating the website accessibility guidelines, WCAG 2.1 it is. And you hear some people say WCAG. So if you hear someone say WCAG, that's what they're saying. They kind of like say it in a weird way. But I say WCAG. And you can find these guidelines here. In 2018, however, the previous administration put that on hold. So for now, there's no clear laws on how ADA applies to websites. There's no regulations, but increasing numbers of lawsuits are now being won under ADA. And this slide, you can see that, 2016, there was only a couple hundred lawsuits. In 2018 and 19, it jumped up several thousand. And I don't have any numbers on 2020, but I have a feeling it went up again because some of these lawsuits have actually won. And so now they're basing upon those lawsuits and kind of moving forward with those rulings. For example, Colorado, I did a ton of websites for restaurants, and I've had to sweep back through all of those websites because almost half of them have gotten sued lately because there's a lawyer particularly targeting restaurant websites in Colorado if they're ADA compliant. So for my opinion in the future, let's see here. However, one should not assume that the absence of DOJ regulations and order guidelines will provide due process defense to claims that a website connected to a place of public accommodations fails to comply with accessibility requirements under ADA. Currently, the WCAG or the WCAG is considered the benchmark for the standards right now. And so even though there's not a law, like a direct law saying that we have to follow some guidelines, they assume that the WCAG is going to be the new standard kind of for those guidelines. Now, this is just a visual chart kind of showing, what Section 508 is and kind of what the levels of, so there's three main levels of WCAG. There's A, AA, and AAA. And AA is what I was mentioning earlier. It was kind of like the range of standards. AAA is really stringent. It's really hard to be a AAA ADA compliant website. So AA is what you're shooting for. Single A is kind of most resembles that Section 508 I mentioned earlier, but we're going to kind of focus more on the AA. Now this slide is for more about kind of when you plan for accessibility in your projects. Now, if you're running a brand new project with a client, it could be your own your next project. I would say at the beginning, the closest to the beginning you can do it. I ran into a lot of designers or developers who would do it at the end, thinking it's kind of like something they should just kind of tag on after they built the project, when in fact they should do it at the beginning because it's the planning your page design, the planning your colors and your brand kind of become important for ADA compliance. Because if your color contrast ratios aren't correct, it's going to be hard for someone who's visually impaired to see the difference in colors. Let's see here. We're going to go briefly over the four main principles of the WCAG 2.1. The first big one is perceivable. Perceivable has four other kind of sub parts to it. Text alternatives, which we might all be familiar with, which is alt text, if you guys have heard of that. Time-based media, as there captions on your videos, things like that. Adaptable, can the content be seen in different ways? Can it go on different screen sizes? We're all familiar with adaptability, so I have a feeling that may not be a problem. Distinguishable is probably one of the biggest ones that people need like help on. That's the use of color, audio control, contrast, resizing text and image text, things like that. We'll go over that. Operable, can they use a keyboard to operate your website, not just the mouse? Seizures, you don't want a bunch of flashing lights, so you don't want anything crazy going on your site to cause seizures, so those kind of need to keep those kind of down. Enough time, can they stop and hide things? Is there a lot of things flashing or popping up, and do they have enough control over those? Is kind of what you have to perceive on that. And can they navigate? Is there multiple ways to navigate through your site? Do you have, footer navigation, sidebar navigation, a clear heading navigation? Understandable, is the text readable? Sometimes websites use too much slang and things like that, so you kind of have to keep that audience in mind on how readable it is. Is it predictable? Are things on focus, or are inputs correct? Kind of just following some standard procedures on if it's predictable. Input assistance, labels, just labels, instructions. All I can say with ADA is just label everything if you can. So we can get to some of the examples of that too. Robust, this is on one of the 4 principles, but for the most part, if you're using WordPress and if you're using Divi, usually it's pretty compatible with most web browsers, Chrome or Safari or things like that. It just wants to make sure that more people have ability to access this information, which is a website. Because this also has to do a little bit with like apps. So the first kind of principle we're going to dive into is distinguishable. Visual elements like text, icons, input fields, charts need to be easily perceivable. On the most basic level, that means they need to be clearly stated out from the background. But it's also important that they're easily distinguished from similar elements around them. For example, like this link on this slide says link embeds in the text paragraph. You can see that's a link, so that link is distinguishable from the rest of the sentence. The need to see things clearly is shared among people who rely on their eyes, but the challenges are quite diverse. People with visual impairment might not be able to see certain colors. Their field of view might be blurred or very narrow, but it's possible that the challenge is caused by projection of light in the room or direct sunlight shining on screen. The visual contrast between colors is a key factor in making things perceivable. But color contrast has its limitations. Creating robust visual differences between elements often requires a more holistic approach. So this is a good example. The one on the left, they're considered high contrast colors between each other. We can tell it's a red and blue, but someone who is more colorblind or on that spectrum, it would be see something more on the right. As you can see, it's a little bit harder to read on the left for sure, but it's definitely hard to read on the right. So even though you think this might be a good idea, as far as like a call to action, it'd be bad for certain people because they could not see it very well. Color contrast text. That means standard text should be a color contrast of 4.5 to 1. Now, when I first heard about this, I had no idea what the color ratio stuff meant. There are tools to help you check your color contrast ratio. And I'll send a link out to this presentation for everybody so you can go in and you can dive into these links yourself. But there's a color contrast ratio checkers, and there's one that can help you do it live on your site, and I'll go over that. And there's ones that you can go to a website, put in the values and compare to see what the contrast ratio is. And your goal is to kind of at least be 4.5 to 1. But also keep in mind, like size of text matters. Like if you have big giant text, that color ratio might be a little different than if you had really tiny text. So if you want more contrast, the tinier the text is. The bigger the text, the more you can play with that color. Okay, don't use color alone to convey information. Now, when you're using color, different elements, you can see on the left, shop is selected. And now if you're colorblind, you'd see what's on the right. You wouldn't be able to tell what's even selected. So not only do you want that, you would also want to bold and maybe think about underlining. And you can see on the right, it's much more distinguishable for someone who cannot see color, is able to see the one on the right compared to to example A and B. I have a few more examples of color, another way to convey color information. So you can imagine from the previous example, A, if that was in grayscale, you wouldn't be able to tell which one was apples, oranges, and bananas. Another way to help identify the differences is kind of, use a pattern, or even better, I think I have one that uses, you actually label them right on the chart itself. Images include media alternatives in your design, visible links to transcript your audio, visible links to audio description of versions of videos, text with icons and graphical buttons, captions and descriptions for tables or complex graphs. These are just kind of examples of additional information outside, like if they cannot watch the video, you want them to be able to like either hear it or find some labels or at least a transcript of it that their screen reader could actually read to them. Provide, if you're like for something like video, you want to provide visible controls, and they want to be able to find closed captions and you know, any more controls, slow it down, speed it up. And there's a great player called Able Player. Able Player, I have a link in here for the GitHub, but you can add a thing like Able Player. There's actually a presentation coming up, I think, pretty soon. I can find a link for that, but there's a presentation from another Meetup group that's just covering Able Player. So it's a pretty good player for WordPress in a sense for kind of making it videos accessible. Let me see here, I have all this stuff. Sliders. Now, sliders for a long time have been very not accessible friendly. They still have their issues even today, even with ones that are pushing the accessible manner for sliders. So you just want to be able to, so they can play and stop it. Like when they hover on it, it should stop from sliding on them. They should have the ability to kind of control that environment. I've seen several sliders on websites that have no control. They just keep going, keep sliding, and it kind of is a nerve-wracking for someone who cannot navigate quickly to stop those. There's a lot of sliders out there that are becoming more accessible. One is the one that I found that's generally good is Smart Slider 3. You can look into that. There's a link on this deck when I send it out that kind of talks about the things they've done to make it more accessible. So I think they did a pretty good job, and it works with Divi. So that's kind of why I put it in this presentation. Okay, image accessibility. One of the big things with images is just doing alt text, and this takes practice for sure. So for this example, I put, you know, the alt text is aerial view of Central Park in New York. Now, if you were talking about open spaces, you wouldn't want to put that alt text. You would want to put something more about open spaces and cities, because what you want the alt text to do is it's more of like a support to what the text on the page is about. So to make it accessible, it needs to make sense to the other text on the page. Just putting any old alt text is not the best way for accessibility. It needs to make sense to the content on the page. And that's why in the future SEO, when Google starts crawling pages, they want to see if the alt text is kind of matching the content of the page. Alt text, like this is another good example. You know, alt text for this one, which is credit cards with logos. People have put that. It's not a very good look. You should put something like the example have Visa and MasterCard accepted. So that shows kind of, that has more context to what the, you know, e-commerce pages for that image. If you have text over, like, you know, you have an image with a bunch of text on it, just go ahead and put, this isn't for every situation, but this gives you a good idea. Just put that in the alt text. Put what this says in the alt text, because then a screen reader can actually read it if someone cannot see. Accessible navigation. Designers and developers should consider both site-wide and page navigation. In general, providing multiple ways to reach any page on the site. Doing so allows users to choose whatever way to find pages is the easiest for them. Users with low vision may find using search easier than navigating through a large menu. Users with cognitive impairments may prefer a table of contents or a site map over clicking through many pages. Okay, so navigation menu tips. Using conventional locations for menus, such as across the top of the page or along the left side of the page. I've seen a lot of crazy menu designs out there, but if you just keep it basic, it's usually the best for accessibility. Providing generous sizes for clickable areas, generally no smaller than 44 by 44 pixels. Keep it, you know, the area big so they can navigate those. Providing clear styles on hover or current states, kind of like also known as focus. And you can see on the slide where it says about, you can see there's a focus indicator around the about. Ensuring that menus are keyboard operable and focus states are never hidden from users. Avoid linking off-site when possible, unless marked up with ARIA labels. I can go over ARIA labels a little bit. It's starting to get kind of more of the advanced stuff, but I can show you some basic ARIA labels you can do. Using navigation landmarks for screen readers. Also, those are also ARIA labels. Divi has a little hard time with it, but there's a plugin that can kind of help you make those happen. Keyboard accessibility is one of the most important aspects of web accessibility. Many users with motor disabilities rely on keyboards to navigate websites in place of a mouse. Basically, just try to navigate your own website currently with just using the tab key. That's sort of how they cycle through sections of content on your site. If you can't find where you're at on your site with just your tab key, you need to work on some accessibility issues. Focus indicators, that's one of the things I was talking about. When navigating your site, you kind of want to see this focus indicator, kind of what is it on? What am I currently selected? And those include elements like text links, buttons, forms, navigation, and sliders. Skip link navigation. So when you first load a page, when they're using the keyboard to navigate, skip links are a way for them to jump to sections of the page. Skip links, I'll read it here. Skip links are internal page links which aid navigation around the current page rather than navigating completely new pages. They are mainly used by screen reader users by bypassing or skipping over repetitive page content. So they could skip to the main body, or they could skip to the footer, they could skip to the sidebar. It kind of depends how the site is structured, how those work. Original input, you can always go check out Unilever. They have a pretty good accessible website. We can demonstrate that in a little bit if you guys would like, but just kind of they have a decent web accessible website. Landmarks, I'll just briefly, these indicators show kind of where landmarks are on this website. These are not visible by the average user. There's a tool that kind of helps you view where these landmarks are. These are a little more difficult to put on Divi, but I can show you, you can kind of get some basic structure with a plugin to kind of help you navigate these landmarks. And these are also used by screen readers to kind of break up the chunks of the website. Heading structure. So this is something a lot of people have control over and they don't know what they're doing right or wrong with this. You know, if you just have a great H1, start your first thing on your page is your H1, kind of gives a context, and then you break it down H2, H3, H4. And as long as those are in consecutive order and properly structured like an outline, then you have great structure, because people actually navigate the website based on your heading structures. Now, using headings and spacing groups related content. So on the left example, it says little spacing and unclear relationship. That section right there has a main heading and then subheadings. You can also see there's an image just kind of shoved in there between the subheading and the main heading. The one on the right example is better because the main heading is grouped with that image now, and then the subheadings are kind of in their own columns in their own section. It kind of keeps the information separate and clear where they're at on the page. Now, reading level is not part of ADA compliance necessarily, but it is kind of an ongoing conversation. I can read this here. While it's not required and for accessibility, it's best to write at a low reading level as appropriate for your content. Doing so benefits people with cognitive impairments, people do not speak English as their first language, or people who may be distracted while reading. Some practices for readability include writing at a high school grade level where possible or appropriate. Limiting paragraphs to like 80 words. Well, you can have more than that, but yeah, try to keep the digestible chunks. Avoid jargon and difficult language where possible. There's an authoring tool that I've used a couple of times, Hemingway Editor. This helps kind of provide some feedback on some of those things. It kind of gives you some idea. If you put a paragraph in there or two, it kind of gives you some feedback. Link and button accessibility. So, you know, we all have learn more. In the past, we've had a lot of learn more on our sites. That's a common thing, just kind of a quick CTA. You're like, hey, just learn more about this blurb. This example says, well, if this blurb was about events, you would want to say see all events, because this gives it more context, kind of what's going on. There is a workaround with ARIA labels I could show you guys, but you know, the best practice, just be a little more descriptive in your buttons, what they're about to see, or what that link is going to go to. Oh, the ARIA label popped up on this. So the ARIA labels, we can make an ARIA label. I can show you how to do this, but see all of our events was kind of like a good way that the screen reader, so when they hover over the learn more, it will say, see all of our events if you have a proper ARIA label. Now, also with this button, learn more is all caps compared to see all events on the right is kind of like case. It's harder for certain people to read all caps. It's hard to distinguish between each one of the letters. So it's better practice. I mean, some people do it for style reasons to have all caps, but in better practice, it's to have kind of what you see on the right. Link button accessibility. This is just no information on the left. For more information, like the example says, for more information on the device independence, click here. Click here isn't quite, doesn't really do description what that's going to do. We're all used to writing like that. I am too. What's more meaningful is on the right. Read more about device independence and make that whole area link kind of is just more descriptive and more helpful. All right, so we're about to get into Divi. The first slide I have here before we go into Divi, tools and plugins for Divi accessibility. I have a Divi accessibility plugin. There's one specifically designed for it. There's a general web WordPress accessibility plugin we can go over a little bit. Contact Form 7, accessible defaults. Contact forms are known to be horrible for accessibility. There are some plugins to help you with that. And then there's this one that's not a plugin. It's a tool called Total Ally. So this tool helps you kind of diagnose quickly what's going on in your site. I can show you how to use that, how to install that. So let me jump into Divi here. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second. Let's see here. Now I'm sharing my entire screen because I might have to jump between some things. Now I have this page. Hold on a second.
Hey Dylan, what was that?
Yeah.
What was that fourth plugin after contact form?
Oh, let me go back. Hold on a second.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't get to write it down fast enough.
I can send you. I'll send you this presentation. I'll send you a link, and everybody will have it. So you'll have all those links. You don't even need to write it down, but I'll make sure you get it all. Let's see here. So this is a page. So this is a test website. This through Divi on, I just used whatever from one of their templates. I just imported a template from Divi themselves, and it threw this page in. And there's a plugin. I can show you right here. Let's see. Let me try to find it. It's all right. This is going back to where you were, right? Is this the one you were wondering about? So this one, you can read the instructions on here. You actually make it a bookmark. It's not really a plugin. And what it does, it brings up this little thing down here when you bookmark it on a site. So we're going to go back to my site, my test site, and we're going to bring up, I have it bookmarked right here. So what it did is it brought this little icon on the lower left. If you refresh the page or go to a different page, you have to hit that bookmark again. What this tool does, it brings up, it has headings, contrast, link text, labels, alt text, and landmarks, and a screen reader wand to kind of help you understand how a screen reader might view this. Now, headings, like if we click on headings as the first one, it's giving me a warning. It has a few warnings. A good thing with headings, you can hit summary. And I can see that I have, let me kind of move this stuff a little bit so you can see that my first heading is an H2. That's what the 2 means. 1 means H1. The problem they're having is that I have an H2 before I have an H1. So that's what I need to do is I need to change one of these to an H. Well, I need to change the top one to an H1, or change this to like a paragraph and stylize it the same, so that my conceptual copywriter will be my H1. And then I have another problem. Now it's this one trick pony, which is on the next section, is an H3. So I need to make sure this is an H2. And you kind of have to go down your page and make sure things are in order in the sense of heading tags. So that's kind of how the heading structure, and we can edit some of that. Like, I don't know if that helps people, but You know, if we went in and, sorry, it might be slow. The easiest one to fix would probably be this one. Let's just start here. So this is an H3, and I switched over to the text view. And I'm feeling like this one should be an H2 because I'm going to make the top one an H3. And then, what was this one? Oops, that's the wrong thing. So this is an H2 and H1. This should come after this, but my call looking at this, we might as well just make this just a regular like paragraph or a span tag or just something different. Design wise, I don't know what I have to look really quick because I don't remember. It's a size 90 monastery. Yeah, so like if we made this like just a basic P, then I went in the text. I'm just trying to duplicate this. You know, it was really big. I don't remember if it had transparency. There was some line spacing. It would take us a while to kind of, you know, play with all this to make it the way it was. But like once we exit, okay, I'm going to exit the builder, and then I'm going to bring back up that tool and look at my heading structure again. It obviously has some more errors, but we fixed the problems that we had up there. Now there's something with, you know, number of blog articles like this stuff down here. Now these are 4s, and you know, you can kind of go down your page and kind of fix those errors one by one. But more importantly, the most important one is the first few, the H1 and H2s. You kind of want to fix those. You do not want an H4 or H2 above your main heading. So that if you had to put weight on things, I would definitely put the weight more towards fixing your H1s. The next tool in the line is contrast ratios. So, well, when looking at this view, you can see it's even finding contrast ratio. This tool is finding contrast ratios with my WordPress admin bar. But you can see that my link color is 2.3. We wanted it to at least be 4.5. So I need to go in and change that link color to that link color on my main navigation to be a little more contrast. These buttons are only 1.23, which makes sense. You can hardly read these. So, you know, if we can go in and change those, you can kind of go through your page and fix as much as possible. It is giving errors a little bit on these icons, which I wouldn't put too much weight. They're more supportive elements. It's more of the content that you need to be focused on. If it's important content, you definitely, like the text is really important content. You want to make sure those are distinguishable when reading. Like these little icons they are off a little bit. They're 3.27. I wouldn't worry about getting those up to 4.25 perfectly, but keep in mind of the content a little bit. So you can go down my page and just kind of see there's a bunch of errors with the color contrast, and that's sort of what we're looking at right now. Link text. Like, oh, this one's giving me an example of this telephone number, which I think is down here. So like telephone numbers by themselves. So this is a linkable telephone number. I don't know if anybody does this on their sites, but you can press this and it'll automatically call a number. Like if they're on their phone or even their computer, I guess, it can call, if they click this right here, it links them to call directly. Now this is unclear. What this is telling us unclear what this is gonna do. And how I would fix this is use an ARIA label. And this will be the first kind of ARIA label use I'll show you guys. I'll load this. So to fix that kind of error, oops, I did not mean to duplicate it. Now, I hope everybody's familiar with href. So this is how this is done. This is the number it's displaying, and this is the number. This is the link it's doing. It's doing telephone number, TEL, and linking out. Now to fix this for a screen reader or to kind of get rid of that error, I do ARIA. Oops. ARIA label equals, and this goes with inside this kind of bracket with the href. And 801, then I do a period. This seems weird, but I'll tell you why I'm doing it this way. 374 period 78 13 period. Okay, so what this is doing, this is adding for screen reader. This is to help, an ARIA label helps a screen reader. And actually we can add more information. Call, we could even put, I don't know, this is a good, kind of a weird example, but what the screen reader is going to do, it's going to say, it's going to tell the screen reader to call number 801, and it's going to pause because it uses periods to kind of like pause. And it's otherwise it's just going to go 801-374-7813. And when I do it this way, it says call number 801, pauses 374, pauses 7813. So I'll press OK on that. It's kind of like a basic ARIA label. And then when we go back into our total li, what was that under? That was under labels. So now I don't even have an error anymore. That was the one error it found with labels. So now that's good to go. And the screen reader wand, now we'll say, you can see when I hover over this, it says call number 801-374-7813. So that's what a screen reader will read back to the person, and not just a series of numbers like it would originally. Image alt text, this is pretty straightforward. This just kind of indicates, hey, these images, this image is decorative. It's kind of labeling it, but it's best to go in and add alt text and meaningful alt text that support the content next to it. So, you know, this would say graph that shows increasing conversion rates. That's kind of what I would probably put for something like this. It just kind of supports what that copy is next to it. Now, landmarks. Now, there's no landmarks on a Divi site initially. And the only we're seeing a landmark up here. It's kind of highlighted. It's called navigation, but that's actually for WordPress core itself. So that's not showing you any landmarks on the website. The only landmark it's showing me is for WordPress core. Now I can go into real quickly here some of the, let's see, how do we add some of these things? Oh, before I do this, let me go back. Now if we go, this is accessible page. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to navigate the site with tab. I'm going to hit tab now. Skip toolbar, that's actually a WordPress core. So that's skip link navigation. This is not on the website. Now I'm hitting tab and I'm supposedly over the logo at this point. I hit tab again, I'm over the shop, but you can't see it, but I'm on shop. You can see the little link on the bottom left of my screen, but about us, accessible, it's over right now. And then it kind of just disappears and it's going down the page, but we don't know where it's at. I keep hitting tab and it's just kind of floating through. Now you notice also it skipped these navigation, the test dropdown 1, test dropdown 2. Now we can fix some of these things with plugins. Okay. The first one I'll cover is there's two main plugins for accessible. Well, there's a lot of plugins, but the two that I've used in the past are, let's see. There is WP Accessibility. This is a main plugin on the depository. You can download this on any website. It doesn't have to be Divi. And this kind of helps you do some troubleshooting on different aspects like that we're talking about with menu navigation, skip links, and everything like that. The other one used to be on depository. It was a Divi Accessibility. Now it's just on GitHub. And I think it's because they don't update it as much. And there is issues. So I do not always recommend taking something off the not on the main depository of WordPress, like a plugin that you can download. This is on GitHub there. So there are some words of caution when using these, but this is Divi specific accessibility plugin. And this helps with appropriate ARIA attributes that we're talking about, toggling issues, screen reader stuff, and menu IDs, and it actually has an integration for that tool that I was talking about. And we'll turn that on so you can see what that's like. Okay, we have it installed somewhere. Right here. Divi Accessibility. let's go to the settings. So the settings, when you turn this plugin on, is actually in the Divi menu, accessibility. So I think most of them are checked when you first install it and get it going and enable it. They put an ARIA support, drop-down keyboard navigation, which it wasn't showing the drop-down menus. It fixes some label issues. Some modules, toggle accordion has some issues with, which I do not have an example on here. We can adjust the color of the outline when the keyboard's focusing on things, and I can show you an example of that. Skip link navigation allows the users to use skip links, and so it adds those automatically for you. And right here, this is kind of the tools. These only show when admin users are logged in, and it can automatically add that tool I was showing you earlier that I used to diagnose the page. You can turn that on, and it's permanently on while you're logged in. So now, if we go back to this page, so now no matter where I'm at on the site, now I get this little icon. I don't have to use that bookmark if you're using this plugin. So if you're logged in, it kind of gives you a quick way to access this. I'm going to switch over to this is a page that I'm not logged on this page, so it makes it a little easier to navigate, to show how the navigation. So I'm going to start using tab again. Now that we have that plugin enabled, let's see here. It's showing me, hold on a second. It's still not working, huh? Okay, yeah, so it's working on this one for some reason. Maybe it had to do with my cache, hold on. Okay, we'll navigate this one. So this one, if you can see now, I'm gonna refresh again. It's gonna skip to content. So someone can hit this and skip to our main content on our page. And now you can see it's highlighting the Divi logo. And then it goes to this, now we can tell it's on shop. Now we can tell it's on about. Accessible, it's going down the drop down. So you can see it's a lot easier to understand. It's going to go through search. Now you can see we're hovering on this button here, and it's going through the links. So you can easily navigate the website and know where you're at all times. Now we're on that number we went over, and it's tabbing through everything. And we can easily tell, for the most part, where we're at. So it fixed, that's great. Now, with just turning on that plugin, someone can navigate our website with the tab key. And then the other plugin, I don't know if anybody cares about, you turn on the other plugin, it's not Divi accessible, but it does similar acts. It just doesn't fix certain things Divi has, like a thing you may not notice. If we didn't have that plugin on, you couldn't navigate this slider that I have here. And since it's Divi specific, the other plugin won't fix some of those issues. Let's see here. Yeah. And then, does anybody have any questions at this point? Am I going too fast or?
No, this is great, Dylan. Thank you. This is Cammie from Atlanta, by the way. Thank you for this. I'm enjoying meeting new people. This is great.
Yeah.
Dylan, the Contact Form 7 accessibility plugin, if you're using the Divi, do you even need that? I saw on your forms that it was highlighting where it was on the form. Do you need the Contact 7?
Yeah, so contact, so there's, okay, we could have a whole presentation on contact forms as far as accessibility. Yeah, because the reason why is when people are accessing forms, there needs to be like warning fields. Like if they input something wrong, it's not supposed to be their email or supposed to be their phone number.
Right.
It needs to kick back distinguishable information that they're doing something wrong. Right. And
so that plugin will do that.
That plugin helps, right?
Okay.
And I wish I could tell you there's a plugin that, you know, sweepingly fixes accessibility issues.
I get that. Trust me,
but forms, just keep in mind, forms and sliders are the two biggest ones that are most difficult. Like it takes a developer like me going in and changing stuff,
right?
So, in some regards.
And another question: are the two compatible? Do they have glitches if you use them both the Divi accessibility and the contact form? Do they fight each other, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, no. One's more for the contact form 7.
Okay.
Accessibility issues. Contact form 7 is just a popular contact form people
Yeah,
use.
no, I know. Yeah, okay.
Because people get frustrated with the Divi form sometimes, and I don't know what people use, right? And
Yes.
contact form is kind of runner-up. Everybody uses like things like Gravity forms or Ninja forms, and
Yeah.
they all, okay, Gravity forms, it costs a lot of money, but they're doing a lot of work in accessibility. Their new releases this year are going to fix a lot of issues they have. So you could eventually move away from Divi forms and contact form 7 and use Gravity forms, and it'll probably fix all your issues. But it's pretty pricey.
Great, thank you. And this last question's for Raquel. When are you guys going to integrate all of this so that there's no need for a plugin to have Divi be the first accessibility builder theme?
Right. Yeah, that's the
Just
$1
asking,
million question.
Raquel.
Yeah, no, it is a good question. I wish that Elegant Themes would have just take this project over, the one I showed you on GitHub, and just kind of make it part of their core. I do wish that.
Yeah, get Campus Press. I did contact them. They're the authors of the Divi accessibility plugin. They were pretty quick in getting back to me because I had some questions about getting it off of GitHub. So the authors are still very much involved with it, and they're Divi users, so that helps. So yeah, get a hold of them, Raquel. They'll help. I'm sure they do it with you. Okay, yeah. I'm out. Thanks very much.
No, it's great. It's a good plugin. Divi does need some work on the accessibility thing. I think but they don't have control over is the biggest control you have is what goes in the middle of the page, right? They have no control over how you build your pages, and that's really where most of your accessibility issues become. You know, proper heading structure, alt tags, layout, all those, the color contrast. That's like the bulk of where accessible issues come from, and we all have that. We have that control. Navigation, yes, of course, navigation of the menus and
that was my biggest concern because using the Divi, the theme builder, I couldn't figure out a way to get the tab menu thing working. No plugin was really doing it because of that. So at least was your menu built with theme builder, do you know, or was it just the generic?
It's just a straight up generic install. It's just like
it works with the theme builder. Good. Okay, I can look into that.
So there's other complexities that I cannot jump into obviously in this meeting, but yeah, it gets complicated.
I do have
I
do have one more question. I'm sorry about the ARIA label. I don't mean to take up this whole thing, but I've been researching this. I was so excited about today. I've been reading a lot, do's and don'ts. Do you put the ARIA labels like on icons so that they're hidden? Like, don't even just go over them. Like, don't even for visual readers or screen readers.
No, that's you can handle that with a blank alt tag or ARIA labels are a weird one because they are used in different ways. I recommend on kind of the example I showed you, right? Using an ARIA label, or they're also using landmarks. Which
but so you wouldn't do it for every icon or something? No,
I think that's too much work.
Okay, honestly. Well, I agree, but I didn't know how serious this had to be. All right, cool. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Dylan, Dylan, there is a question about ARIA labels and how the Divi accessibility plugin helps address that. Is there an example of how it helps or fixes it?
Yeah, because I installed the plugin, right? Let's see. We did not. So we have that tool now. Sorry, I didn't go back over everything that fixed or helped with. So landmarks. So these are our label landmarks. So ARIA labels can be used, like I said, to convey additional information on a button or a link, but it also can be used as the landmarks. Now, this is what it added automatically. This is like the main area, meaning the main content. This is region. There must be down at the bottom, a menu item down here, which might be the footer. I can't tell what it's highlighting, but I feel like if you use the Divi footer, it's going to be another menu item. So it adds them okay, right? Like it doesn't do a perfect job of how to label these. What it should have is, see how this one says navigation? This should be labeled navigation. And so it's kind of a fix, it's kind of not. That's the problem I have with the ARIA labels and the Divi kind of fix to it. If that makes any sense. ARIA labels are probably, these landmark ARIA labels are probably the hardest thing to solve in Divi, because Divi is an open sandbox. It kind of can design whatever you want. Traditional websites or have structures, right? Like they have a sidebar, a footer, a distinct footer, and they're actually built in kind of like that kind of traditional table or sections. Divi is built like you can build whatever you want. And so that kind of pushed the ARIA label thing out. And that's going to be a hard thing for Divi to solve in a kind of the sense of also keeping freedom in the builder, but also kind of adhering to the structure that's needed by screen readers.
What would be cool is if they added an ARIA that section label thing in the section module where you could set your own name for it and then plug that in. That would be cool. Then you have control.
Yes. So like if they had the advanced tab, right? And they
like
put
an anchor.
And they just called one ARIA label, right? Mm-hmm. They could probably, that would give you the freedom to, if you design your own navigation menu, you could then tag that navigation, right?
Yeah.
They can even do a drop down. Like you can only pick from so many options because maybe they don't want people naming them all sorts of crazy names.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a great feature. I mean, someone could come out with a plugin that just does that, and probably people will buy it.
You taking notes, Raquel?
But there's a lot of work, and accessibility is an ongoing thing. It's a little bit of moving target. It's a little bit, it kind of technology changes. Like people use their phones to navigate, right? Like 10 years ago, people weren't using their phones as much to navigate websites. So you got to understand there's kind of this ongoing thing with it. But if you just spend a little time, like I said, doing alt text and looking at your colors and doing these basic things, you're going to be ahead of the game more than most people. So let's see here. That's not what I wanted at all.
So Dylan, in the interest of time, for those who are probably needing to leave here in just a few minutes, there's the tool that you showed for checking the website to see if it's accessible. Are there other things out there that we can also use to check to see how accessible the website is?
Oh, of course.
That we might consider.
Yeah, so this one's the first one, total. So quick note on this, if you see A1111, that actually means accessibility. It just means there's 11 letters in the word accessibility. So A1111 is just actually how it's said. But anyway, this is one of the tool that I showed you. Code Sniffer, if you really want to know what's wrong with your site, Code Sniffer is a really good one. This one's a very interesting one. I can demonstrate this one if you want. And then there's online checkers. So these two are live. So I put the term live by them. This one and this one means it looks at your site live and gives you error messages or kind of warning messages. Online ones are, you go to this website right here, you plug in the URL you want to access, and then you check it. And it kind of spits out a list of errors you can print out and then kind of go through them that way. And the two big ones are W3C Validator and Wave. As well, Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool. And those are kind of like other ways to check accessibility. And yeah, Code Sniffer will drive you nuts because it really dives into your code and tells you even what's wrong with your code in accessibility terms. I feel like this is more for a developer kind of person who needs to fix accessibility issues with the actual code.
Great, that's awesome. And then I think probably some of us who work with clients who are being sued or have received litigation about accessibility, is there any type of certification that can be posted on the websites to say, hey, this passes AA, AAA standards or anything like that? Just kind of that stamp of approval that the time and effort we've put into making a website accessible.
Right. So there's not necessarily a standard, but what you can do, that's a good question. What you can do, I had a website that just went through this, right, at one of these restaurants. This one's called Ken and Sue's. But what you can do is there's an accessibility statement, right? Like in the footer. And it can be simple as complex as you want. But basically on this one, it says, Ken and Sue is committed to providing a website that is accessible to the widest possible audience. So this is a basic statement that's talking about that they're making efforts to make it WCAG 2.0 accessible at level AA, right? And if you have any problems accessing things, you would give some contact information. Basically, this is just a statement saying that. It's not necessarily that they're certified. It's just it's stating to the public, we're making efforts to do this. And this also helps get out of litigation problems. So someone who is like a lawyer cruising around looking at websites trying to sue them, if this is on there, they probably won't pursue it any further. Just because you are making efforts to make it better. And you can see that. What was the, gosh, dang it. I can't think of the site that we had on the presentation earlier. Sorry if I'm scrolling back up, but there was a site, Unilever, I think it was, right? Maybe I'll just go to that. Yeah, they have, so this is a big company, so you can tell, we'll scroll to the bottom. They'll have an accessibility statement as well. And theirs will be a little bit longer, but it's basic. They have theirs broken out into sections, what they do, and text alternatives, site layout, audio, video content, just kind of their standards for it. And they're trying to make efforts. So this is kind of a way, I think is it kind of answering your question? It's kind of a way saying, hey, we're accessible.
Yeah, that helps a ton. And then just one last question for me with the AA and AAA standards. How important is it that we strive for AAA standards? Does it matter? Yeah. What's the pros and cons?
Yeah, AAA, those are really stringent, right? I don't know anybody who needs to be AAA standards because it would be like a really plain website in a way, right? And some of those efforts would just be hard to reach. I don't know. I can't give you a specific example. I just feel like there is like the color contrast ratio has to be really high in that, for example. And that's kind of too high to say to a brand, like your purple that you love and you've been using for 20 years, now you have to change that. I think some of those standards are not reasonable in a sense. I think AA, all my sites don't meet AA perfect, just to be honest with you. They meet a lot of it, like 90% or 95%, but there's a couple of things I can't budge on with the clients, so they just have their deal breakers and they're willing to take a risk to sacrifice some of that responsibility. You know what I mean? Like the give and take. If most of their website's accessible, they're happy with it as far as clients' view of it. Now, will they get sued? Probably not, because they've done most of the work to be close as they can to the AA standard. There's no one out there saying, oh no, your one slider doesn't have an alt text on this one slide. Now we're getting taken to court over it. I think that's pushing it. You know what I mean? So I think continuously thinking about it in a process whenever you're building a new website or tackling a project is really important. Just kind of like at least putting it in your mind when you start. So, and yeah, and like clients, if I can get them if I can get them as a branding client, like they're rebranding or starting a new brand, it's the best time to get them, because I can work on their color palettes and saying, hey, these are all high contrast and this is what I recommend for your website.
That's awesome. And it looks like Sergio has a question.
Yeah.
My question is, I really love what you set up. Everything is fantastic. Like, wow.
Oh, thanks.
Incredible. My question is on Ken and Sue's. I was just looking on the website, and it is a restaurant. And you speak fast. I'm from Argentina. I'm really trying to get you. What was the link to see the to do the way that I can add into the website that I'm making for my customers the accessibility thing?
Oh, you're talking about like the usually they're in the footers.
Ken and Sue's.
Yeah, Ken and Sue's is a restaurant, right? So if you can you find their website, Sergio?
Yes, I did. I have it on my phone right now.
Okay, scroll to the very bottom, and there should be a footer link called accessible. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? Okay. Yes. So that's a basic statement I use. Yeah, that's just a general statement. It's like, hey, we're trying to make moves to be accessible, right?
Say also
So
that you can prevent to have a lawsuit. I have customers in Colorado, and I'm very scared, and I have a few restaurants in Utah. I'm very scared of what you have mentioned, because attorneys can be horrible, like hunting people like us. This statement or this is going to help us kind of prevent a lawsuit, kind of a thing. Is that what you mean?
yeah, yes. Only after you've done the moves to make it accessible. You can't just put the statement on your website and hope it protects you, because if they hit the tab key once and it doesn't do anything, then they kind of know, right? So you kind of still have to do a little bit of effort. If it's not perfectly double A, if it's like single A or 50C, that means you're getting better. You're getting closer. You're not.
So
you don't have to. Yeah.
To prevent the lawsuit, it has to be the double A, then, right?
No. What I'm saying is, even if you're in 508 or double or single A, and you have that statement on your website, that means you're working on it, right?
Okay.
Because that's fine. You don't have to obsess being in that perfect double A. Double A is what we strive for.
Okay, so what I want to convey, I'm so sorry, I think I'm not conveying what I want, and which is great. So if I have a double A and I do everything that you have said, that is fantastic. I'm gonna work all day today on that. I can, I'm very scared of lawsuits all the time too, and I can, if I do that, if an attorney gets there and they see that basically I have the double A, because I guess this attorney might have people working on go to this website and check with the tools that you already mentioned that are fantastic tools. If they see that we have, what percentage do you think of accessibility would be the one that it can prevent some of my sites, the restaurant sites especially, to get a lawsuit?
What is the percentage that you might get a lawsuit?
No, the percentage of accessibility on the website that has to be done. So I see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I have double A, and I think it's 80%, and I'm still working, on other things. And I can, so that I can be like, okay, we can just. I don't think we might get a lawsuit soon.
Yeah, I would say that's hard to answer to say, but I would focus on their homepage and their contact page, right? Like, do those first. And then start going down their main use pages that you see on Google Analytics. Like, if they have a menu page that a lot of people use, if everybody goes from Google to their menu, like their dinner menu, then do that page as well. Those will help. If you're trying to break up in sections, And
the question is, do you know if the attorneys, they have a website that they use when they go in front of a judge to say, hey, we've been checking this website and these people is not doing this and that, and we base this information, because usually they have to show something to the judge and say, hey, they're, based on this information on this official.org website or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar with the internal workings of the law firms themselves. I do get clients come to me in litigation, right? They're already in litigation. They have lawyers they're working with on their side and against them, of course. And they come to me saying, we're in litigation, we need to fix it today. And what the lawyers are trying to do is just get a little bit of money out of them and say, all right, well, if you fix it today, we only want this much money. We'll do a settlement case, right? Instead of taking all the way to court. So honestly, they just want to siphon off $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, or sometimes more, but depending on the size of the business, in a settlement case. And then they have someone like me come in or like you, and just kind of fix it, and you want to do that before they get there. You want to fix your websites before they even get to that point, before they're served a subpoena, basically.
Okay. So okay. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, everyone. We're definitely over time, but we'll send out the recording of this meetup, and then I'll also include Dylan's presentation and other links that he shared with us, and we'll let you digest all of this. And if there's a lot of interest, we can probably do a deeper topic into like contact forms or something like that if people are really interested in it. But again, thank you, Dylan, for coming and sharing your knowledge. I think we're all just soaking it up.
Yeah, and I'm open to do I'm open to do another workshop. Like, if you wanted to make a session just like looking at people's sites and helping diagnose and just all talking about it, I'm cool with that too, right? So at some time in the future, just to.
Justin, if I might mention, tomorrow at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time, the New York City Divi Meetup is also having an accessibility presentation, and Scott Winteroth, who is the Chicago Divi Meetup organizer, is going to be presenting. So if you're interested, that one's available too. You do have to RSVP to that because it's limited seating on that one, but just so if you're interested.
If you can, there's, I think 30 minutes later, there's another intro or another Divi accessibility on the same day tomorrow.
Yeah,
in Atlanta, I think, right? So
actually, no, we're piggybacking on them.
Oh, you are? That's what's going on? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was
because they were doing one and Scott couldn't do more than one, so we're just joining them.
Oh, that makes sense.
He's a busy man.
Yeah, and there's a group in California who just only meets on accessibility issues, and like I said, they talk about the able player. They talk about specific things, and it's good to jump into those. And a lot of times, people show up to those meetings who have the disabilities. Like they'll actually show you, like, this is what a screen reader, how it works, and this is what I see. So those are pretty interesting meetings to go to. Yeah. Well, thanks again, and you guys have a good week.
Yeah. Thank you, Dylan.